They used to call me the Iron Lady. Not because I was cold, but because once I set my mind on something, nothing could bend me. 32 years as a federal prosecutor will do that to you. I'd sent organized crime bosses to prison, dismantled corruption rings, and never, not once, lost a case I believed in. But sitting in that Manhattan law office on a gray October morning, my own daughter thought I'd forgotten how to fight. Rebecca sat 3 chairs down from me, her Cartier bracelet catching the light every time she fidgeted with her phone. Marcus, my son-in-law, had his hand on her knee in that possessive way he always did, like she was a prize he'd won rather than a woman he'd married. The conference room smelled of expensive leather and fresh coffee that no one was drinking. The attorney, across from us, a young woman in her 30s with perfectly straight hair and a suit that probably cost more than my monthly pension, kept glancing at me with that look. That pitying, patronizing look I'd seen too many times in the past 6 months. "Mrs. Walsh," she said, her voice artificially gentle, like she was talking to a child. "Do you understand why we're here today?" I smiled. I knew exactly why we were here. Marcus leaned forward, all concerned son-in-law energy. "Catherine's been having episodes," he said, not even looking at me, forgetting conversations, getting confused about dates. "Last week she called me by her late husband's name." He shook his head sadly. "We love her, but we're worried she's not capable of managing her affairs anymore." Rebecca nodded, tears already forming in her eyes. "My daughter had always been a good actress. It breaks my heart, Mr. Park, but Mom needs help. She needs us to step in before she hurts herself." That's when I saw him stiffen. The attorney they'd hired, this young woman named Jennifer Mills, had introduced him as simply the mediating counsel. But I'd recognized James Park the moment he walked in. 23 years ago, he'd been a junior prosecutor in my office. I'd taught him how to read a jury, how to follow the money, how to know when someone was lying by the way they touched their face. He was looking at me now, really looking, and I could see the recognition starting to dawn. "Mrs. Walsh," Jennifer continued, "we have medical documentation here suggesting that you've been experiencing cognitive decline, Doctor. Raymond Fisher conducted an evaluation last month and found significant memory impairment." I let that sit for a moment. Dr. Fisher, Marcus's college roommate. The same doctor. Fisher, who'd lost his medical license in New Jersey 5 years ago for insurance fraud before conveniently relocating to New York. "May I see that documentation?" James asked, his voice suddenly sharp. Jennifer slid the papers across the table. I watched James scan them, his jaw tightening with every line. I knew what he was seeing. I'd seen the same papers when Marcus accidentally left them on my kitchen counter 3 weeks ago. Sloppy. They were always sloppy. "These tests," James said slowly, "they indicate Mrs. Walsh couldn't remember what year it is, couldn't recall the current president, couldn't count backwards from 100 by sevens." "That's correct," Jennifer said primly. "Backwards from 100 by sevens?" James repeated. He looked at me. "Mrs. Walsh, would you mind?" Rebecca's hand shot out. "This is humiliating for her. She doesn't need to." 100, I said clearly. 93, 86, 79, 72, 65, 58, 51, 44, 37, 30, 23, 16, 9, 2. The room went silent. "What year is it, Mrs. Walsh?" James asked. "Launcenlinarchasi. Who's the president?" I told him. "What did you have for breakfast this morning?" "Steel-cut oatmeal with blueberries and black coffee. Same thing I've had every morning for 40 years. Jennifer's face had gone white. Marcus wasn't moving at all, but I could see the pulse in his neck accelerating. Rebecca was looking between her husband and the lawyer, confusion replacing her practiced grief. "James," I said quietly, "it's good to see you." He stood up, actually stood up from his chair, something I'd never seen him do in a negotiation before. "Catherine Walsh," he said, and there was something in his voice. Respect, maybe even awe. "The Iron Lady? You two know each other?" Jennifer asked weakly. "Know each other?" James laughed, but there was no humor in it. Mrs. Walsh was the chief federal prosecutor for the Southern District of New York. She ran the entire office. I worked under her for 6 years. She has a photographic memory and an IQ of 158. He turned to Jennifer. "Who the hell hired you for this case?" Mr. Webb contacted our firm. He said his mother-in-law needed help with her estate planning and— Estate planning? James cut her off. He looked at Marcus. Is that what we're calling it? I opened my handbag. It was time. I think, I said, we should discuss Marcus's previous employment history. My son-in-law had gone very still. Rebecca was looking at him now, really looking at him for the first time in what might have been years. Marcus Webb, I continued, pulling out the first folder. Born Marcus Weber in Phoenix, Arizona. Changed his name when he moved to New York in 2015. Prior to that, he worked as a financial advisor in Scottsdale. I slid a document across the table, where he was fired for embezzling $340,000 from 3 elderly clients. That's not true, Marcus stammered. Catherine, you're confused. You're— 2 of those clients, I continued as if he hadn't spoken, were women in their 70s who trusted Marcus with their retirement savings. The third was an 82-year-old widower with early-stage Parkinson's. Marcus convinced him to invest in a startup that didn't exist. I looked at my daughter. He settled out of court, paid back half the money. The case was sealed. Rebecca's face had lost all color. Marcus? She's making this up. He turned to Jennifer. She's clearly delusional. This is exactly why we need to. I have the court records, I said. It took me 3 weeks and 2 calls to a retired judge I sent to prison in 1997. But I got them. He owed me a favor. I pulled out the second folder. This one was thicker. In the past 8 months, I said, Marcus has transferred $127,000 from my savings account to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. He's forged my signature on 17 documents, including a new will that leaves everything to him and Rebecca, a power of attorney that gives him control over my medical decisions, and a quitclaim deed for my apartment in Brooklyn Heights. I let that sink in. He's also been in contact with a Dr. Raymond Fisher, who is not, as it turns out, a licensed psychiatrist in New York State. Dr. Fisher lost his medical license in New Jersey in 2019 for filing fraudulent insurance claims. He and Marcus were roommates at Arizona State. Jennifer was frantically taking notes. James had his phone out, I assumed recording everything. How did you— Marcus started, then stopped. How did I know? I finished for him. Because I've spent 32 years investigating criminals, Marcus, and you are, without question, the sloppiest criminal I've ever encountered. I pulled out my phone and opened the voice recording app. I'd learned how to use it from my grandson, 15 years old, and he could make these things do anything. This is from August 14th, I said, and pressed play. Marcus's voice filled the room. We need to move faster. The old bat's sharper than we thought. If we can get Fisher to sign off on the evaluation, we can have her declared incompetent by October. Rebecca's voice responded, I don't know, Marcus. This feels wrong. She's my mother. She's sitting on $3 million in assets, and she's already written most of it to charity. Do you want to be comfortable, or do you want to struggle like my parents did? I stopped the recording. Rebecca was crying now, real tears this time, not the performance she'd been giving earlier. I have 47 recordings, I told them. Conversations in my kitchen when you thought I was napping. Phone calls you made from my living room. That particularly illuminating discussion you had in the car outside my building about whether to put me in a state facility or just wait for me to die naturally. Marcus had his hand over his mouth. Good. He should be sick. I also hired a private investigator, I continued. Turns out Marcus has been having an affair with his assistant for the past 2 years. Her name is Vanessa. She's 26. He's promised to leave you for her once he gets his hands on my money, Rebecca. My daughter made a sound like something breaking. I installed cameras in my apartment 6 weeks ago, I said. I have footage of Marcus going through my desk, photographing my financial documents, practicing my signature. I looked at Jennifer. I assume your firm would like to withdraw from this case? She was already gathering her papers. Mrs. Walsh, I had no idea. If I had known the circumstances— You didn't ask, I said simply. You saw an elderly woman and you assumed— They all do. James spoke up. Catherine, if you want to press charges— I already have. I pulled out the final document. I filed a complaint with the district attorney's office last week. I also filed for a restraining order against Marcus, which was granted yesterday. He's not allowed within 500 feet of me or my property. I looked at my son-in-law. The police are waiting downstairs. I called them before I came up. Marcus lunged forward, but James was faster. He had his hand on Marcus's shoulder, pushing him back into his chair. "You can't do this," Marcus hissed. "I'm her son-in-law. I'm family." "Family," I repeated. "My husband died 12 years ago. Massive heart attack at 61. He was the love of my life. When Rebecca brought you home, I wanted so badly to believe she'd found someone who would love her the way David loved me." I shook my head. "But you don't love anyone but yourself, Marcus. And you made the mistake of thinking that because I'm 67 years old, I must be weak." I stood up. James stood with me. "I've put mobsters in prison," I said. "Men who killed people with their bare hands. Men who ran criminal empires worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And you thought you could outsmart me with a fake doctor and some forged signatures?" Rebecca was sobbing now, her face in her hands. Part of me wanted to comfort her. She was still my daughter. But a larger part of me, the part that had learned to recognize manipulation in all its forms, knew she'd made her choice when she went along with Marcus's plan. "Mom," she choked out. "Mom, I didn't know about Vanessa. I swear I didn't know." "But you knew about the rest," I said quietly. "You knew Marcus was stealing from me. You knew he was trying to have me declared incompetent. You went along with it because you wanted the money." She couldn't even deny it. There was a knock on the door. 2 NYPD officers entered, and I gave them a small nod. James handed them the recordings, the documents, everything I'd compiled. "Marcus Webb?" one of them said. "You're under arrest for elder financial abuse, fraud, and forgery." I watched them cuff him. I'd seen it 1,000 times before, but it never got old. That moment when someone who thought they were untouchable realized they'd been caught. Rebecca stood up, reaching for me. "Mom, please. We can fix this. I'll make this right. You can't fix this, Rebecca," I said. I was tired suddenly, bone-deep tired in a way I hadn't felt in years. "You chose him over me. You chose money over your own mother." "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I know you are," I said. "But sorry doesn't erase what you did. Sorry doesn't give me back the trust I had in you." James walked me to the elevator. We didn't speak until the doors closed. "I should have known," he said finally. "The Iron Lady wouldn't go down without a fight." "They thought I was weak," I said. "They saw my age and assumed my mind had gone with it. People do that. They look at gray hair and wrinkles and they stop seeing the person underneath." The elevator opened onto the lobby. Through the glass doors, I could see Marcus being led to a police car, Rebecca trailing behind him, still crying. "What will you do now?" James asked. I thought about that. My apartment in Brooklyn Heights, the one Marcus had tried to steal. My investments, carefully managed over 40 years. My pension from the prosecutor's office. My life, which I'd built brick by brick. "I'm going to take my grandson to Paris," I said. "He's never been. His father, my son Thomas, says he's been studying French in school. I think he'd like the Louvre." James smiled. "That sounds perfect. After that," I continued, "I'm going to finish writing my memoir, and I'm going to establish a foundation to help elderly people who are being financially abused. People who don't have my resources or my experience. People who need someone to fight for them." "The Iron Lady Foundation," James said. "Something like that." We shook hands at the door. His grip was firm, respectful, not the way you'd shake hands with a fragile old woman, the way you'd shake hands with someone you'd fought beside. I walked out into the October sunshine. The air was crisp, the kind of cold that promised winter but hadn't quite delivered it yet. I thought about Rebecca, about the little girl who used to sit on my lap while I read her stories, the teenager who'd told me she wanted to be just like me when she grew up. The woman she'd become, who'd chosen greed over integrity. It hurt. God, it hurt. But I'd prosecuted parents who'd betrayed their children, children who'd betrayed their parents, spouses who'd destroyed each other. I knew that family wasn't always a bond that held. Sometimes it was a chain that dragged you down. My phone buzzed. A text from Thomas. "Mom, I heard what happened. Are you okay?" I smiled as I typed back. "I'm fine. Tell Kevin to pack a bag. We're going to Paris." His response came immediately. "I love you." "I love you too," I wrote back. 3 months later, I stood in a courtroom and watched Marcus Webb get sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. Rebecca sat in the gallery, alone. She'd filed for divorce 2 weeks after his arrest. She'd tried to call me 17 times. I hadn't answered. The judge was a woman I'd worked with 20 years ago. She looked at Marcus with the same disgust I'd felt that day in the law office. "Mr. Webb," she said, "you targeted a woman who dedicated her life to public service, a woman who put criminals like you behind bars for 3 decades. You exploited your position as family, your access to her home, her trust in her own daughter." She shook her head. 8 years. And you're lucky it's not more. After the sentencing, I walked out into the spring sunshine. May in New York, everything blooming and green. Thomas and Kevin were waiting for me on the courthouse steps. "Grandma!" Kevin ran up and hugged me. He was almost as tall as me now, this boy who'd been a baby when my husband died. "We saw it on the news. You're like a superhero." I laughed. "I'm just a woman who didn't want to be stolen from, sweetheart." "You're the Iron Lady," he said seriously. "Dad told me all about it, how you never lost a case, how criminals were scared of you." "Some of them," I said, "the smart ones." Thomas put his arm around my shoulders as we walked. "How are you really, Mom?" "I'm okay," I said, and I meant it. "It hurts. Probably always will, but I'm okay." "Rebecca sent a letter," he said quietly. "To the house. She wants to see you." I didn't answer right away. We walked past street vendors selling flowers, couples holding hands, tourists taking pictures, life going on like it always did. "Maybe someday," I said finally. "But not today." That evening, I sat in my apartment, the one I'd lived in for 35 years, and I thought about what I'd lost and what I'd kept. I'd lost my daughter, at least for now. I'd lost the illusion that family was always sacred, always safe. I'd lost some of my faith in people, but I'd kept my dignity, my independence, my sharp mind that Marcus had tried to say was failing, my ability to fight back when someone tried to take what was mine. They used to call me the Iron Lady because I was unbending in pursuit of justice, because I saw through lies and found the truth buried underneath, because I documented everything, trusted evidence over emotion, built cases brick by brick until they were unshakable. And sitting there in my apartment, looking out at the Brooklyn skyline as the sun set, I realized something. They still did. They still called me that, and they always would. Because age doesn't diminish you unless you let it. Because experience is a weapon, and I'd spent 32 years learning how to wield it. Because the brain I'd built through decades of prosecution didn't just disappear because my hair turned gray. Marcus had made the oldest mistake in the book. He'd seen what he wanted to see. An elderly woman, an easy target, someone too old, too confused, too weak to fight back. He'd forgotten to look deeper. Forgotten that the person who'd sent crime bosses to prison was still in here, still sharp, still watching, still prosecuting deception, one case at a time. And that was the thing about being the Iron Lady. You didn't bend. You didn't break. You stood firm and you let them crash against you, and when the dust settled, you were still standing. I was still standing, and I always would be.